If you're an HR professional who works hard to fill roles within your company, keep employees engaged, and build company culture, welcome to America Back to Work, where dreams only work if we do. We'll share wide-ranging issues surrounding pre-employment background screening, HR topics such as recruiting, hiring, labor trends, and company culture, as well as broader HR-influenced business topics such as customer experience, service level excellence, and protecting what matters through best practices in prevention, protection, and corporate security. America Back to Work is brought to you by S2 Verify. Here's your host, Arnette Heintze.
Welcome to America Back to Work, brought to you by S2 Verify, where our purpose is to help you hire with confidence and manage insider risk. I'm your host, Arnette Heintze. Thank you for joining. Today, our guest is Doug Simon. Doug is the founder and CEO of DS Simon Media, where they create Metaverse environments and videos to turn experts into influencers. Since 1986, Doug and his company have worked with Fortune 500 companies and others that rely on this strategic counsel and execution to get results via TV, radio, web, and social media. Doug started his career at NBC Sports, where he was a talent assistant to Bob Costas. Doug, welcome to the show, and I'm looking forward to hearing how this early work experience of yours influenced your decision to start a company. So,
Sure,
well,
Arnette, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate that. And also, I want to thank you for your service. Previously, you were involved in the Secret Service Agency, so that's really wonderful. Yeah, so I think the key thing from my work at NBC Sports, where I was there for 8 years doing mostly weekend work, helping with production during the games, the pregame, the halftime, and the postgame shows, was it gave me great experience in live broadcast, live television. And my philosophy has always been, which I love about production, is it's either perfect or it's I don't want to say a bad word on the podcast, but I think you get the drift of it.
we get it.
Yeah, so working with Bob was great. He was terrific. My role was to collect the information from the other members of our team about what the scores were in the games, what the scoring plays were, and work with Bob beforehand about what were some of the trends, what were the things he wanted to hear about. So before the halftime show would come on, I'd provide him with all that information. I'd have a 2-minute briefing. And the real exciting part is he would do one halftime show for a bunch of the markets, go to commercial break, and then another bunch of games had gone to halftime. So I had to make sure he was fully updated within what might be as little as 30 seconds to get ready to go back on air and not give wrong information. So it's just a real rush, and it was great. And Bob, terrific guy. He matches really his persona game. When I started the company, he was willing to have me draft a letter of recommendation for him, which he made some changes to. He wasn't fully comfortable with the line I wrote that said it was because of the work of people like Doug Simon that I was named Sports Broadcaster of the Year. That got toned down a little bit, and he announced he was toning that down to the entire crew that was working on the show. And also, when my oldest son, who was a broadcaster when he was 12, calling local games, was about to be bar mitzvahed, I'd asked Bob to send a video that I could surprise him with. And the next week, I had a video on my desk in my office. So great around guy. And we stayed in touch over the years.
So fabulous, fabulous. So I understand your company produces media tours, and I'm going to ask you a little bit to give us some insight in that. But you're working in a space around Metaverse. I think you call it Metaverse 3.0.
Yes, I do.
And I think that's going to be interesting, especially in the sense of context to HR issues. And so tell us a little bit about that.
It is interesting, and it really does grow out of some of the previous work. This a natural thread with the live broadcast work I did at NBC Sports to the live broadcasts that we're doing with satellite media tours with our own studio and control rooms to give guests, generally with companies, with nonprofits, an opportunity to be interviewed on 20 to 25 stations across the country within a 5-hour period. We work with the client, develop the story, have our team pitch the media, line up a schedule. And instead of the old days where you had to travel from place to place, it was time-consuming, expensive, difficult. What executive had a month of their time to give to go market to where it can be done very efficiently. And interestingly, that's become an effective in-house tool where the fact that you're communicating to the world through TV news can be then shared with the people inside the company because they know you've gone out publicly and made those statements. So because of our live broadcast experience, we've had opportunities to work on a number of virtual events. And we had a client that was looking to do a virtual conference, but within the metaverse environment about business opportunities in the metaverse. So we produced 20 hours of content that went straight to a metaverse environment that guests could check out. They could go to the keynote address or one of 3 breakout rooms where discussions were taking place. The key thing about the metaverse, and this applies to HR specifically, is that you go from people spewing information and an audience receiving it to a real opportunity for accessibility and engagement. And I'll give you an example from some of the work that we've done. Of those 20 panel discussions that we had, some of the people were located internationally. Let's say it was an in-person event. They would have had to take a day to fly in and travel, book a hotel room, be at the conference the full next day, have a night in the hotel, fly home the next day. That's 3 days out of their work that they can't do. Some people just couldn't afford to give that much time. Instead, they would get a technical briefing from one of our producers in advance to make sure they were going to look good and sound good, a 45-minute period to get their panel discussion, and then another 30 minutes to be available for Q&A. And of course, they were welcome to stay throughout the entire program. Their cost, instead of thousands, is zero. Their time cost, instead of 3 days, was a couple of hours. So you can really make more people, more information accessible while allowing tremendous engagement.
Right. So in the simplest terms for our audience, Metaverse is a virtual platform. Would that be correct?
Sure. And we describe it as an environment that you enter into. And there is confusion out there. And if anyone tells you they're an expert on the entire metaverse, probably should look somewhere else, because there's at one range movie quality views and video game quality views, where you're that immersed in that type of environment. I think for HR and for the public relations clients that we work with, I don't know that it's necessary to spend those millions of dollars to engage in a gee whiz type of environment. Most importantly, it's about professionalism and functionality, and can really be designed in a customized way to meet your specific needs as an organization.
So do you see a trend right now of a certain type of company that's leaning towards a meta universe strategy, or an industry specific? Is there something driving into this space?
Yeah, the funny thing about that is whenever we have conversations with new people about what we're doing in the metaverse, they're coming up with applications that we haven't necessarily thought of already. We're speaking to a real estate firm that's like, oh, we could do this. We're talking about doing press conferences, trade shows, learning environments and experiences, which I think that's probably the most relatable piece to HR. But it's really across the board as a way to reach people. One of the things is accessibility. And we talked earlier about the sort of big picture metaverse with these video game and movie environments. And maybe you need extra expensive equipment that makes a certain part of the population nauseous, costs a huge amount of money, and good luck if you're doing anything for more than 15 minutes in there. What's key is being able to have an environment that if someone can get on a Zoom, they can click on a link, they can be part of the experience. So, the breakdown you talk about, clearly there are certain workers at certain companies that don't have that downtime to be on a computer on a link. So for them, it's less applicable. But if you're involved in an industry where you can reach out to people and they have that accessibility, it'll work. The other thing, if you're going to require people or give them an opportunity to check in on content after work hours, say if you're, a line worker at an Amazon warehouse and you're going to pay them part of their time to attend these sessions, that can be an opportunity as well. Because even with a cell phone, you can gig.
Yeah. So in the companies that are going to this platform and to this manner of communicating, are they solving any significant problems that you would put into various categories? Cost has got to be one, obviously. So
yeah. Clearly cost and accessibility. And there are a couple of different ways to get into that. One is, are you going to lease space in an existing environment to use it, or are you going to build your own environment? Obviously, if you're going to be using it consistently for an HR application, it might make sense to test it first with an event with leased space to get a feel for what you like, what you don't like, what works, what doesn't work. But if you're going to have it on 24/7, 365 days a year, you definitely want to build your own, because the costs of using someone else's space are going to be far more expensive than the opportunity to amortize that.
Yeah. So, in regards to HR, many of the pros in our audience are dealing with this growth of remote work and limitations they're finding with video conferencing, even Zoom. And, we're coming up more and more, we're finding this concept of quiet quitting arising. How do you see these issues in the metaverse solving some of these problems?
Sure, I think they can. I don't always go with the popular view. I think quiet quitting has always been there. It's become sort of a hotter topic. Any study I've seen from years ago was that 100% of your employees are never fully engaged at any one moment. That's always a challenge and a responsibility of business ownership, leaders, and increasingly HR. A positive thing that has come out of sort of the more competitive battle for employees with what's happened with COVID is that HR has been pushed up in terms of importance, in terms of acquiring people, keeping them happy. The metaverse can play a role, giving them access to information they need, giving them opportunities to voice their concerns, because it's a very flexible environment. In the metaverse environment we've created, for instance, you can easily have one-on-one private conversations. You can have group conversations, say with 17 people that enter in a room with a moderator leading that can have that. You can have presentations from a stage. You can have access to information. So it's really about shaping it for what you're trying to do. And is it something where it's hard to get engagement from people when it's one or two people to a huge number of people? Or is it about the opportunity for smaller groups to work together?
So that brings to mind corporations that like to do these all hands meetings or town halls. There's a chance to really shape the town hall and give it a theme and give it a feeling that you want to communicate. Is that correct?
Definitely. And a lot of that is the scale of the environment you create. From a cost perspective, if you're planning to have, say, 500 people tops at an event, that's different if you're doing all hands for 100,000 people. You need that back end, you need that support, and you need that scale for that. But again, it's how you design it, for what are the purposes and needs you need, and what are the engagement problems that you're having. And as you know, while there's some commonality across companies, there's also perceived, and each company perceives that their own challenges are different. So a lot of that is the design of what you're doing.
Yeah. So with this new environment, are there security issues that arise or concerns that you might have about this? And can you share some of those thoughts with us?
Yeah, there are definitely security issues with anything. For example, our environments that we use, they meet all of the European cybersecurity standards, which tend to be much tighter. So again, if you're partnering with someone out there to create this environment, make sure that they're achieving those standard levels. Obviously, you don't want to be in violation to it. It's also a question of what's the information you need to put in there. For instance, could that information be sent personally to employees through the systems you already exist, but the opportunity to talk and discuss them could happen within the metaverse? There's no rule that you're required to keep the content up in the metaverse, though there are opportunities. For instance, let's say you were at a company and they're trying to explain their new healthcare plan to employees. You can have a series of videos that whenever employees enter the space, just by going in front of that area, that video will start to play. And let's say you have 10 employees who arrive 30 seconds apart at that destination. The beauty is it's not a loop. Those videos will start from the top for each employee as they enter that space. So that can be something really helpful where you could set up an event where maybe there's a general discussion for the group. They can go to individual areas where they can see separate videos specific to their needs. Then they could go to separate meeting rooms and have conversations with the group and even private one-on-one conversations. Obviously, a lot of that information is sensitive. It's discussed, but that information wouldn't be housed or kept within that metaverse environment.
Yeah. When it comes to recruiting, which, a lot of our audience is kind of always looking at and dealing with the challenges of finding the right talent and to bring aboard, what's your sense of where recruiting can be involved with a meta universe environment?
Sure, there are huge opportunities for recruiting. And as the parent of a 28 and 26-year-old who, when they were in college, I rebranded my company from DS Simon Productions to DS Simon Media because I was like, hey, I want to be competitive hiring smart kids coming out of college or smart young people, I guess would be a more appropriate thing to say. So if you're able to engage with potential prospects in a metaverse environment, automatically there's this window now where that places you as being more contemporary, more together, more with it, again, with increased engagement that's possible. So I think that's going to be attractive. And it's usually maybe a 1 to 3 year window where doing so is more attractive. And there can be news stories. XYZ company is now recruiting within the metaverse. You can come and attend if you want to attend our presentation, attend our session. Clearly, there's a registration part of it that gives you that person's name, email, whatever information you want, phone number, where they're going to school, GPA, whatever kinds of things. They can fill out forms as part of that registration, and then you can have that engagement. So it's a win-win. And I think in short time, it's not just going to be the college and graduate school level people. This is going to become much more common in society.
Yeah. So a company that wants to take advantage of a meta universe experience and environment, do you have a couple of steps that you would recommend for them to take to begin this journey?
Sure. I think a first step is go online and look at metaverse environments that allow you to attend them without a huge cost. Get your people dipping their toes in it, seeing what's out there, what's working, so they could say, oh, that's cool, but that wouldn't apply to us. Oh, I don't like that. I need this. Then, before building your own environment, dip your toe in the water, work with an organization that maybe has an environment set up so you can test it, see what works and what doesn't. For instance, for the metaverse environments we're going to be building for our clients, they might have similar functionality to what we currently have, but they may not be planning to hold press conferences in the metaverse. So they might need a setup where they're recording one-on-one interviews that journalists might have with spokespeople, but there might be other functionality that they need. So really put together a list of all of the things they'd like the environment to do. Then there's sort of the design aspect, the design branding. For instance, for us, we have a whole section where the signage will change based on the specific event that's happening.
Now, you touched briefly on cost. Is there a significant investment that companies need to make to take advantage of this?
It can vary. If a client came to us and wanted their own metaverse, they could probably get into that. Obviously, it's like, how much does a house cost? Well, is it a 6-bedroom house or is it a 1-room place? But I would say it's reasonable that they could get into it for about $50,000 to have their own environment. One other thing they'll have to factor in is like a monthly fee for getting all the support. You want 24/7 support, you want training, your own people to be able to handle it, as well as the provider you're working with. We recommend for companies that are going to do it, they want to have a couple of people that really immerse in it. Typically, they could be on their HR team, on their communications team, so that way they can do a lot of the work themselves once they get ongoing. And they can test different things to see what is easier for them to use and what's beyond their capabilities.
So in this space right now, are firms that are doing this early adopters, or has this hit the medium level of adoption?
Surprisingly, I'd have to say the second. We did a survey of public relations professionals, and Nearly 50 senior executives responded. Compared to last year, where 11% of them were involved in Metaverse projects, this year, 45% of them
Wow.
said they were going to be doing Metaverse projects. That involved B2B, business to business, business to consumer, internal communications, creating Metaverse environments, and live broadcasts into Metaverse environments.
Yeah. Well, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, Doug,
And I was going to just add that those were the numbers that really spurred us to move
yeah,
forward. It's like a wow for
yep,
us.
it does. It really appeals to you. Any perspective that you have about the adoption rate in the HR sector and employment recruiting? Is there any sense of the adoption that it's had in that space?
We're seeing adoption all over in surprising spaces, but we haven't surveyed that particular marketplace. So I don't want to just throw
Yeah.
out a number, but it wouldn't surprise me if the increase level is similar to what we've seen in other platforms.
Well, Doug, we're about to come up on our time now, but I did want to ask you a question that I actually ask every guest that we have. And that is, if S2 Verify were to conduct a background screening check on you, would there be any surprises that we would uncover?
Well, my assumption is given your background with the Secret Service, you already did a background check on me and I still made it onto your show. So I appreciate that. But probably the single most surprising thing would be that despite being a longtime New York Knicks and New York Jets fan and season ticket holder, I still remain an incredibly optimistic person.
Well, that's a sign of strength right there.
There you go. And thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you and your viewers. It's a great show that you do.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. I appreciate you taking the time, and I look forward to seeing how this metaverse space evolves over time. And for our audience, would you share with them how they might best keep track of what you have going on?
Sure, Arnette. And obviously, we can give you a tour, but we have an email address, metaverse@dssimonmedia.com. My email is dougs@dssimonmedia.com. Our website is dssimon.com. I think you might be getting the drift of it. So your viewers and listeners can check in either of those ways. And we love one of my colleagues who's been phenomenal in helping us put this metaverse together is our leading tour guide. So we'll tour you around and take whatever questions you have. And really, it's great for us because we learn from each person who takes the tour because they're bringing something different. Like, oh, could you do this? What about this? So then we go to the developers and say, what about this? Can we do it? So it's really an exciting time to be sort of expanding how we communicate to create this increased accessibility and engagement, which is so important to the success of so many organizations.
Well, that's wonderful. Doug, thank you so much again. And for our audience, please tune in next week when we talk about the 4-day work week with our guest, Alec Sujong Kim Pong. He's the author of the book, Shorter, Work Better, Smarter, and Less. And it goes without saying, let's get America back to work because dreams only work if we do. Thanks so much, Doug. Appreciate you joining.
Thank you.
If you want to stay abreast of HR, recruiting, and hiring trends, tips, and tools, make sure you subscribe to America Back to Work. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating and a review.